The Great Interregnum and Rise of Territorial Princes. The Great Interregnum, 1250 to 1273, marked a fundamental watershed in German political development, effectively ending the possibility of strong centralized imperial authority and inaugurating an era of territorial fragmentation that would define German political structure until the 19th century. The death of Emperor Frederick II in 1250 and the subsequent extinction of the Hohenstaufen dynasty created a power vacuum that German princes exploited to consolidate their territorial authority at the expense of imperial power. During this period, the concept of Landesherrschaft, territorial lordship, emerged as princes transformed their administrative positions into hereditary territorial sovereignty. The ecclesiastical princes, including the archbishops of Mainz, Cologne, and Trier, along with secular princes like the Dukes of Saxony and Bavaria, established virtually independent principalities. This fragmentation was institutionalized through the development of territorial law codes, separate administrative systems, and distinct cultural identities within the broader framework of the Holy Roman Empire. The election of Rudolf III of Habsburg in 1273 ended the interregnum, but did not restore strong imperial authority. Instead, the Habsburg strategy focused on territorial acquisition and dynastic aggrandizement, establishing the pattern that would characterize imperial policy for centuries. The development of the electoral system, formalized in the Golden Bull of 1356, created a constitutional framework that balanced imperial dignity with princely autonomy, ensuring that the emperor remained dependent on the goodwill of the major territorial rulers. Urban development and the Hanseatic League. The late medieval period witnessed unprecedented urban growth and the emergence of German cities as major European commercial and cultural centers. The phenomenon of Stadtluft macht frei, city air makes free, reflected the transformative potential of urban life in a predominantly agricultural society. Cities like Cologne, Nuremberg, Augsburg, and Lübeck developed sophisticated governmental structures, impressive architectural monuments, and complex economic networks that connected German territories to broader European and Mediterranean trade systems. The Hanseatic League represented the most significant manifestation of German urban commercial power. Originating in the 12th century and reaching its zenith in the 14th and 15th centuries, the Hanse created a vast commercial network extending from London to Novgorod. The League's political and economic influence rivaled that of territorial princes, with Hanseatic cities maintaining their own diplomatic relations, military forces, and legal systems. The Hanseatic system was built on sophisticated commercial law, standardized currencies, and shared mercantile practices that facilitated long-distance trade. The development of the cog as a standardized ship design, the establishment of trading posts, contore, in foreign cities, and the creation of commercial law codes like the Lübeck Law provided the infrastructure for economic expansion. The League's influence extended beyond commerce to include cultural exchange, with German merchants serving as vectors for the transmission of ideas, technologies, and artistic styles across Northern Europe. Urban craft guilds, Zünfte, provided the social and economic foundation for urban prosperity. These organizations regulated production, maintained quality standards, and provided social welfare systems for their members. The guild system created a distinctive urban culture characterized by corporate identity, civic pride, and sophisticated artistic patronage. The masterpiece tradition and elaborate initiation ceremonies reflected the guild's role in maintaining craft traditions and social hierarchies. The Renaissance and humanism in German territories. The Renaissance reached German territories through multiple channels, creating a distinctive German humanism that synthesized Italian intellectual traditions with indigenous scholarly and religious concerns. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg around 1440 revolutionized the dissemination of knowledge and made German territories central to the European intellectual revolution. The printing centers of Mainz, Strasbourg, and Nuremberg became focal points for humanist scholarship and religious reform. German humanists like Johannes Reuchlin, Konrad Keltis, and Ulrich von Hutten developed philological methods that revolutionized biblical scholarship and classical studies. Reuchlin's work on Hebrew language and Jewish texts challenged traditional Christian approaches to Old Testament interpretation, while Keltis's recovery of classical texts and poetic innovations established German literature as worthy of serious scholarly attention. The emergence of universities like Heidelberg, Leipzig, and Tübingen created institutional frameworks for humanist scholarship. The Northern Renaissance in German territories was characterized by its religious orientation and practical applications. Unlike Italian Renaissance humanism, which often emphasized secular themes, German humanists remained deeply concerned with religious reform and moral improvement. This orientation prepared the intellectual ground for the Protestant Reformation, while also contributing to Catholic reform movements. Artistic developments paralleled intellectual changes, with German artists like Albrecht Dürer, Hans Holbein, and Lucas Cranach achieving international recognition. Dürer's innovative printmaking techniques and theoretical writings on art established German visual culture as a major European force. The development of woodcut and engraving techniques made German art accessible to broader audiences while creating new markets for artistic production. The Protestant Reformation and religious warfare. The Protestant Reformation, beginning with Martin Luther's posting of the 95 Theses in 1517, represented the most significant religious and political upheaval in German history since the Christianization of the Germanic tribes. Luther's theological innovations, including justification by faith alone, the priesthood of all believers, and scriptural authority, challenged fundamental Catholic doctrines and papal authority. However, the Reformation's success depended as much on political and social factors as on theological arguments. The Holy Roman Empire's decentralized structure provided numerous opportunities for religious innovation to find political protection. Princes like Frederick the Wise of Saxony protected Luther from imperial and papal persecution, while urban magistrates in cities like Strasbourg and Nuremberg implemented religious reforms that reflected both theological convictions and political calculations. The development of territorial churches, Landeskirchen, under princely authority created the foundation for the later principle of cuius regio, eius religio. The Peasants' War of 1524 to 1525 demonstrated the radical potential of Reformation ideas when applied to social and economic grievances. The peasant armies that devastated much of southern and central Germany drew inspiration from evangelical preaching and reformist ideas about social justice and biblical equality. The savage suppression of the peasant rebellions, supported by both Catholic and Protestant princes, illustrated the limits of religious reform and the determination of established authorities to maintain social order. The formation of the Schmalkaldic League in 1531 marked the militarization of religious conflict within the Holy Roman Empire. The alliance between Protestant princes and cities created a formidable political and military force that challenged imperial authority and Catholic unity. The subsequent Schmalkaldic Wars, 1546 to 1547, 1552 to 1555, demonstrated the impossibility of resolving religious divisions through military force alone. The Peace of Augsburg, 1555, established the legal framework for religious coexistence within the Holy Roman Empire through the principle of cuius regio, eius religio. This settlement recognized both Catholicism and Lutheranism as legitimate religions, while granting territorial rulers the authority to determine their subjects' religious affiliation. However, the exclusion of Calvinism and other Protestant denominations created ongoing tensions that would eventually explode in the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War and the Peace of Westphalia. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, represented the culmination of religious, political, and dynastic conflicts that had been building within the Holy Roman Empire since the Reformation. Beginning with the defenestration of Prague and the Bohemian Revolt, the conflict evolved from a localized religious dispute into a European-wide struggle that devastated German territories and fundamentally altered the European balance of power. The war's progression through distinct phases: Bohemian, 1618 to 1625, Danish, 1625 to 1629, Swedish, 1630 to 1635, and French, 1635 to 1648, reflected the gradual transformation from religious warfare to great power politics. The intervention of foreign powers, particularly Sweden under Gustavus Adolphus and France under Cardinal Richelieu, internationalized the conflict and reduced German territories to battlegrounds for competing European ambitions. The demographic and economic devastation was unprecedented in German history. Estimates suggest that the German population declined by 25 to 40% during the war, with some regions experiencing even more severe losses. The destruction of agricultural systems, urban centers, and trade networks created economic depression that lasted well into the 18th century. The breakdown of social order led to widespread banditry, witch hunts, and cultural trauma that influenced German literature and folk memory for centuries. Military innovations during the war, including the development of standing armies, improved firearms, and new tactical formations, revolutionized European warfare. The emergence of military entrepreneurs like Albrecht von Wallenstein created new forms of military organization that challenged traditional feudal structures. The war's brutality, exemplified by events like the sack of Magdeburg, demonstrated the inadequacy of existing international law and the need for new frameworks for regulating interstate conflict. The Peace of Westphalia, 1648, established principles of international law that would govern European relations until the Napoleonic period. The treaties recognized the sovereignty of territorial states, established the principle of non-interference in domestic affairs, and created mechanisms for peaceful dispute resolution. For German territories, Westphalia confirmed the fragmentation of political authority while maintaining the fiction of imperial unity. The settlement's religious provisions extended the peace of Augsburg's principles while adding Calvinism to the list of recognized faiths. The establishment of 1624 as the normative year for religious settlements created a baseline for property rights and religious practice that provided stability after decades of warfare. However, the exclusion of other Protestant denominations and the continued privileging of Christianity over other faiths demonstrated the limitations of early modern religious tolerance.